Okay.
Do we have a bunch of chairs here?
Probably.
How we doing?
Actually, Joe, because I gotta do
Yeah.
public
Yep.
input, so can you
Sure.
go and see? Right there, right? In the
Yep.
back over there.
So are we okay now? All right. I'd like to call to order the Select Board meeting on September 10th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. This is an in-person meeting at 138 Main Street on the first floor. As a convenience to the public, it's available electronically versus the Zoom link below or via HW Cam for viewing and participation. In the event of a technology failure, the meeting will continue in person. Please be advised that this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom. Holy smokes. It's also recorded for playback video on demand viewing at hwcam.org. Please note that other than call to order, all times are estimated. Go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. So next up is public input. So if any folks in the audience here have any comments they would like to make to the board, this would be one of the times to do so. So this particular public input is reserved for matters falling within the jurisdiction of the select board and are not on the current agenda. The 2 minutes per person with a maximum of 10 minutes total. A person may only speak once. Please state your name and address.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that you can hear me. Point of clarification before my time starts, Steve. I thought we came here tonight to be able to talk about 3A. Is that under your jurisdiction?
Yes.
Okay. So my name.
Just a point of clarification.
Yep.
If it's in reference, if your particular comment is in reference to agenda item A, discussion Angus West email specifically, you would wait until then. But if it's just a general comment on 3A, this would be the time to do so.
Yeah, in my case, again, just reclaiming my time for a second. In my case, it's more of a general thing on 3A, but I understand there was a letter written by a gentleman named Angus, and that's, I'm sure, why some of the people are here. But one of the, so my name is Edward Flynn. I live at 2 Sias Lane, and that's Flynn. I was on the Finance Committee here in Wenham for 3 years. Before I moved up here, I was on the Finance Committee in Weston for 6 years. I have a pretty good understanding of the way municipal government works, and I'm here to talk about specifically 3A. I know that for now, the state is suggesting that people say that right now 3A is nothing more than a zoning exercise. However, I've spoken to people in the Attorney General's office who you may know, if you've seen her document, saying it doesn't really matter what you vote, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. I assume every one of you have seen that declaration that she wrote. I've taken it very seriously, and I assume she means what she says. And one of the things that bothered me, and I've been to a bunch of meetings, was that there was no one, I didn't actually see anybody do anything to try to qualify what the cost to the town of Wenham's going to be under 3A. So I went on to the website of the Planning Board, and they did a very comprehensive study with a company called Cambridge Econometrics on a bunch of the things that they're working on, but specifically it included 3A as well, and it included a lot of facts and figures that were really helpful when I tried to put together the income being generated by what's going to be 2 buildings, There's one that's going to be downtown here within the half-mile zone. There's going to be one up on Boulder Lane. If you talk to people in planning, they'll explain that to you. And I spoke to a couple of developers on the amount of square footage required for 1,500 square foot units, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. That's what these people, the econometrics people, said, and that's what the developers I spoke to said is most likely going to happen. I don't have enough time in 2 minutes to run you through the facts and figures, but I don't want you to take my word for it. So I went to the Staples and I printed, Staples, and I printed off a bunch of copies. So I'll leave them with you.
15
They're just
seconds.
handwritten. You can look at what I wrote. Most of it relates back to, and I included the reference pages of that in here, so you can look at it. Here's the bottom line on 3A. We're going to be required to build 365
Your
units.
2 minutes is up. Please wrap up.
Is it really?
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. We're going to be required to build 365 units. The break even on the 365 units, because there's going to be a cost, and then there's going to be the town side cost, which according to these people is 25%, and then it comes down to the schools. So if you look at the revenue and you look at the expenses, the break even on the number of students in 365 units is 39 students. If we have only 39 students to 365, give me 1 second, Steve.
Sorry,
I'll be done in
2 minutes is,
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few more minutes?
No, you're done.
Okay.
That's unfair, come on.
No,
He needs to finish.
he's got to be more succinct, that's all.
No.
Well, I did a-
We killed our time. Let him
Mr. Chairman, to be fair,
Representative of the concern in this room, I think
This
you
is
could
a
afford
town
us a
issue.
little more time and not treat us like children.
Mr. Chairman, I did do a lot of work on this today, last couple of days. I've sat down with people on the planning board. I've gone through this. I've done a lot of math, and I've done a lot of other things.
Who have you sat down with the planning board
Margaret,
coordinator?
yeah.
So you haven't talked to Dan or Ann Weeks?
I didn't talk to any of the elected officials. I talked to I had questions about the process of 3A, and she seemed to be the person in the meetings that I went to who seemed to be the expert on it, so I went to her. I'm not understanding the hostility. Did I do something wrong to you?
No,
Okay.
what we're trying to do is
I can be done in 30
keep order in these
I can be done in
meetings.
30 seconds. Would that be fair?
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. So if we have 39 students, it's a break even. If we have what these people who were hired by the planning board think happens, which is 0.5 students, that we're going to end up with 182 students. That's going to have a net negative to the town of $2,869,779. If we end up with one student in each one of those 365 units or 365 students, we're going to lose $6,519,779. And I'm not going to go through my whole list, as I'm going to leave it for you. But in case you didn't know, there's been a new amendment that's been sent out for the recertification of 3A in 10 years. It expires. And in order for us to get a recertification, they will, or most likely will, require additional units. And I'll just leave you what I have. Thank you for the extra time. I appreciate it. I wish I had been more succinct, but it's just a lot of facts and figures.
So-
This is a scary, expensive
Okay.
thing.
Steve, where can people access the Q&A you did for 3A?
it's on the town website. It fields many of your points that you brought up tonight.
It's on which website, Steve?
The town website, under the planning board,
Well, it gives
there's a
you cost of
Q&A.
how much this is going to cost?
Yeah, it goes into, the town of Milton did a study to specifically on multifamily developments and the cost impacts to their educational services with the implementation of 3A. And we also did the analysis that you're mentioning with Cambridge Econometrics.
Oh, good.
Which, the only piece you need to take into your equation is there is a growth element of that. So these folks,
I would agree with that. You mean new growth
new growth.
in year one? I would agree with that. There is new growth in year one.
Well, it's built into the tax levy. It's picked up by the additional infrastructure, and it's carried forward perpetually.
Yeah, but year one is pure profit. If no one lives there, and when your assessor goes out, not to, take up too much time, but if they build a $2 million building, you're going to get the tax revenue from that and have nobody in it, as long as your assessor gets out there, and I'm sure that you will, because we allow that in this town. So is that what you meant? This is the first time I've.
Yeah, the new growth, Proposition 2.5 allows new growth to account for added infrastructure needed for the communities to support an expanding tax base. So in 3A or any situation where you have a community that's growing, the new growth is directly proportional to the assessed value of the new developments.
That's true.
So those are extra monies that the town brings in from the new residents or builders or owners to pay for additional needs in education, police, fire, central admin,
In
et
addition
cetera.
to taxes, you're saying?
Taxes not in addition to the other residents. These are new tax monies brought in by the new development.
For 1 year, correct?
No, it's built into the levy, and it grows by 2.5% every year.
So
So if you bring in $1 million today,
Yeah.
or this year, next year you'd have $1 million plus 2.5%.
So they're going to pay their assessed value plus whatever the assessed value of the building is plus 2.5% every year? They're going to be paying twice as much in taxes as everybody else? Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all.
Mr. Flynn,
Yeah.
are those copies of the memo that you mentioned?
Yeah,
Could you hand the package to Ms.
I will.
Ms. McGovern?
I will.
And then she
And
can.
I hope you go
distribute- we
through
can
it.
I certainly will.
I've
but-
been to a bunch of meetings, Benjamin, I've been to a bunch of meetings, and this is the first time anybody told me that anyone's ever done a study on what this was going to cost the taxpayers in the town. I've heard things like this is only an exercise in zoning. I've heard things that, oh, it's never going to happen, this, that, and the other thing. But it is going to happen, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And if we end up with a lot of kids, it's going to be really expensive. Last thing, if we say yes and Hamilton says no, then you can rewrite everything because of the deal that we have with them on a per student basis. It's going to be astronomical for the town of Wenham.
So, again, I ask you to go to the planning board page on the website and read the Q&As. I'm not saying I'm for 3A or not.
Yeah.
But I think there's some misunderstandings out there. And that's it, we're done.
Yeah. He said on the select board, you're saying on the planning board?
Planning board, if I said select board, I misspoke. It's on the planning board page.
I know, by the way, I'm on the planning board.
Oh, I thought so you're both selectmen and a planning board member?
I am. So,
Anyone else? As well as I thought it was done.
Thank you, Ned.
should we cut? Does anybody else? Good luck.
Yeah, so is there anybody else? So again, this is a new process, but if these are for matters that are not on the agenda and under the jurisdiction of the select board. So if you have a general comment you would like the select board to hear, this would be the time to do it. If you'd like to speak specifically, is there an agenda item tonight that you're here to speak specifically on?
That later, but the thing is,
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be a discussion of Mr. West's letter.
Yes, we're not there
If I
yet.
speak after that,
Yes.
We're not there yet. That's, if you want to talk specifically to the letter, then
yeah.
you would want to wait. Okay?
Steve and Michelle, is there anyone online? Do we have a large
any hands.
contingency? Okay, just double checking. I want to make sure that they also have the option. We have over 30 people online, so if anybody at that point would like to say something, please raise your hand so we don't overlook that.
Elizabeth McCurrick, 6 Walnut Lane. I'm opposed to 3A, but what I wanted to bring up is I was concerned to hear that the setback on the proposed site was still only 40 feet, and there was discussion, there was some, about it being more. And I abut that property, so I'd love to, I hope this doesn't have to go anywhere anyway, but if it does go for a vote, I would love to see that setback more than 40 feet.
So just so you know, Augie already told us that.
He did, great, okay, well, I believe the same thing. Thank you so much.
Richard Eyre, Ledyard Farm, 82 Walnut Road. Grandparents moved here in 1919, so I think we've been in town a while. I'm just having a hard time understanding how this thing can even go forward, because I have gone to now over 160 houses and knocked on doors. I have yet to find a resident who wants this. And I've only met 3 that won't put up signs, and that's because they have a job in Beverly government or their daughter is on the school board. So I just think you got a real uphill battle, because people have realized in this town, people like me, fireman for 35 years, never paid any attention to the vote. You people didn't do anything important enough to even care about. But now with schools and these buildings and changing our zoning, I think what is it, Admiral Mitsubishi said, you've really woken a giant. And I think it's something you ought to maybe just hear from the town a little more, because everybody is very passionate, very upset, and very worried about what Patton Park can turn into. Just be downtown Lynn. I'm finished.
All right. I think public input's over. Oh, wait, we got one more?
I have one on the screen, too.
There's also a hand on Zoom as well.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Select Board, Ellen Wright, 4 Asbury Avenue, Hamilton. I'd like to point out one thing. Milton, you think what happened in Milton can't happen in Wenham? It can. If this town chooses to do so, they can clean house, and all of one of you will be gone. What happens in Wenham affects Hamilton. 1A, it's a one-way road. Anyone who has to go anywhere of consequence in Hamilton goes down 1A. No one wants this. Wake up, smell the coffee, and read the memo.
So the only point I would make is that we're not voting or advocating one way or another. This is going to come for everybody to vote in November.
That's right.
So,
It's not, but to be fair, Mr. Chairman, it's not unusual for a select board to take a position on a very highly important vote.
we haven't taken a position.
Oh, yeah, you have.
No, we haven't.
I don't know if you have or you haven't.
We haven't.
I wasn't saying that.
You don't debate.
Okay.
I think what I just said was, you said there's gonna be a vote in September, and we're not taking a position. And I frankly think, if I was a select board member, I would wanna take a position on one of the most important votes that's come in front of this town in probably 25 years. If you don't wanna do it, don't do it, but I would suggest you do it. That's just for me.
Got time.
Tosh Blake, Sagamore Street in Hamilton. Just to back up what some people have said here, I guess one question I have the same with people in Hamilton, the Select Board and Planning Board, is I haven't seen any public officials explicitly endorse the concept of 3A. And a lot of people have maybe cited some negatives, and some say they want to remain neutral. But if most of the people that show up at these meetings over and over, and I've been to a bunch in Hamilton, it's overwhelmingly negative, and no one's defending it in the public, saying, like, well, I like 3A, then why would you risk putting it on a ballot if it could have extremely negative consequences for the town? At least it would be interesting if some people would defend it. But if no one here is defending it in any position of authority, why would you put something so irresponsible on a ballot? It seems very strange to me. Thank you.
Sal Celeste, and that will be the final public input.
Sal,
This will be the 10 minutes.
go ahead, Sal.
Sal Celeste, 20 Puritan Road. Look, do not change the zoning laws, and do not submit a zoning plan to the state. This board has the responsibility to act in the best interest of the residents that live here now, not the ones that they're going to be bringing in. And they're not supposed to be advocating for state-sponsored programs, especially ones that are going to be detrimental to our town. There are people in this town and on our planning board that want to see this passed because it makes them feel good. You know what makes me feel good? My property value increasing, my property taxes remaining stable, the town water and sewer infrastructure not being strained beyond what it already is, a small effective police department with low crime, a school system that's not bloated, that remains the envy of this state, no congestion downtown. Those things make me feel good. Right now, I don't feel good.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for their comments. All right, moving on to reports and announcements. So I have a few announcements for the board and the public this evening. Yep. I have a few report. What's this kid's name? You turn up the volume a little. All right. I have a couple announcements tonight. So public comment, as you can see, we've integrated the select board's new public comment policy. I will highlight that tonight's all items for individual discussion are open to public comment, and going forward, there will be a separate subsection that kind of delineates those out with items that will be only for discussion for the select board. As you notice, the comment section is back. The feedback I received that it was overly restrictive, so we have placed it back, in hopes that we will not receive any negative feedback. Volunteer Fair, the League of Women Voters of Hamilton Wenham is hosting their second annual Hamilton Wenham Volunteer Fair on Saturday, September 21st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Community House. We've reserved one table for participation for the boards and committees with the town of Wenham. Michelle is coordinating schedules. Michelle's also preparing a poster and some display material that will go on the table. And we also have compiled a number of current and older past years annual town reports that have been sitting around, and we thought this would be a good opportunity to hand them out. People can take them home and look through them. So we'll be all ready for that. We have the September 11th Remembrance on September 11th at 9:55 in front of the fire station. They're going to ring the bell at 10 a.m. sharp, and the service will begin. Tomorrow, we'll be having a coffee, on Thursday, September 12th at 8:30 a.m. We're going to be holding a coffee for Kirsten Alexander, our outgoing town clerk. So we welcome you all to attend and give your farewells and good lucks. I also wanted to mention the passing of Chief Peter Carnes. Peter Carnes was born and raised in Wenham, passed away on September 4th, 2024. He served on the Wenham Police Force starting in 1971, became chief in 1984, and retired from the Wenham Police Department in 1995. The service is Monday, 11 o'clock Monday morning, Main Street Cemetery. If anybody wishes to attend.
Walkthrough on the 11th and the ceremony's on the 12th.
Okay, the walkthrough is on. Thank you for the correction.
I don't think that's correct, but the burial is on the 11th. That's what the Veterans Committee chairman said today.
I got his text.
So you had it right.
Okay. All right, and that's all I have this evening. Peter?
I have nothing.
I do not.
I do. Karen Anger and I last week had a meeting with an organization that is relatively new to Wenham called Three Sisters Garden Project. And Kate has been working with them a fair amount. They're the newest licensee for Reynolds Farm. So as many people may know, the food project has been doing great work for people inside and outside of Wenham for many years out of Reynolds Farm. And Three Sisters, which is based in Ipswich at the Coverley School next to the Sisters of Notre Dame site over there heading towards Little Neck and Ipswich, is now going to be growing food for their program at Reynolds Farm, which is a great addition to the town of Ipswich, to this town. And Karen and I met with Liz Green, the director of that program, and Stacy Verge, who's the executive director of Accord, to learn more about what they do and the good work that they have been doing with Accord for many years, and hopefully will be able to expand by their presence at Reynolds Farm. If anybody's interested in learning more about Three Sisters, which is a nonprofit organization, their website is threesistersgarden.org. threesistersgarden.org. That's all I have.
All right, shall we move on? All right, let's talk about minutes. I read all the minutes and I was fine with them. Anyone?
Good here.
Yeah, I think we can move the consent agenda. Yeah?
Yep.
I'd like to move to approve items A and B on the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, let's vote. Clay says yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Gary, yes.
On this item? Okay, topic A, discussion on Angus West's email dated August 30, 2024, titled Wenham, follow Hamilton's example, reject 3A. Do we want any public input on this? I think we've already sort of gotten a flavor.
There's people waiting to speak.
Okay, so I offer public input, 2 minutes per person. A person may speak only once, 10 minutes total per item, unless noted on the agenda item.
And this is
There he is.
specific to the Angus West, right?
Yep, this is for clarification. This is specific to the Angus West email agenda item A under new business.
Is it possible to project it on the screen or no? Letter?
Yep, we can do that.
It's page 19 of 219. Page 19 of the PDF. I think you're on 15.
Thank you.
If anybody has any public comment, now is the time. We have 10 minutes. All right. Go ahead, sir. Just state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Angus West, and 7 Walnut Road, lifetime Wenham resident. Thank you very much for taking the time to respond to my email. I was a little startled. I only learned that you put it on the agenda yesterday from someone else, so it was not given much time to prepare. But given you only want 2 minutes, I think it's really in here. At its heart, it is that First, I personally am going to oppose it, but I do not think you should be bringing this to the townspeople at a town meeting without having done further assessment. The full analysis of the costs versus benefits, and specifically the cost of what the sanctions would be should we not go forward, should be fully assessed over the long haul. And all the good comments that were made earlier about schools, infrastructure, water, all the rest, the impacts on the town. I'm very concerned that we don't know what the SJC is going to say on the Milton case. Many people in Hamilton and elsewhere have been putting amicus briefs into that decision to see what the Supreme Court was going to say about it. I'd like us to know Hamilton is deferring on its decision until the spring. They are not feeling compelled for a December 31 decision. They're going to put forward two different proposals, a 3A and a code-based alternative, as they wait to see what happens. They're also aware that their residents are putting amicus briefs and that there's a groundswell of opposition to 3A, which is why they're putting the alternative. I believe it's your responsibility as the Board of Selectmen to make a decision whether to recommend this to the town meeting or not. And to do that adequately, you need to have assessed with all the facts and figures that the planning board and others can give you of the long-term impacts to the town. I am terrified because of the 40B example in Massachusetts, that this is only the nose of the camel coming into the tent. The rest of the camel has started coming in. August 1st.
That's 2 minutes. Please wrap up.
August 1st, we had the accessory dwelling unit, ADU law, passed at midnight, which will basically bust our 1 acre zoning as well as what's going on with the multifamily. So I think you owe it to the townspeople to defer this and wait until you've seen the SJC. And I actually think you should be filing an amicus brief on our behalf as a townspeople why we're opposed. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, so I'm Tom Starr, 41 Pleasant Street. I also serve on the Open Space and Rec Committee and the Climate Committee. And I want to support what Mr. West has said. I went to a planning board meeting that was held in Bucher some months ago, and I think what they're trying to do is put forth a plan. You know, it makes sense, that's their job, they're doing their job. But at the same time, I have not heard any benefit for the town being in compliance. As far as I can see, there are only negatives. That's my main question. The other thing is, as Mr. West brought up, to have the vote not at a town meeting is kind of, I realize it's a special town meeting, but people don't even show up to the real town meetings. So I don't think you're gonna get, you might not have a quorum, you might not get an accurate vote. You know, for almost 400 years, Wenham has preserved itself. That's a real asset for the state and for the region. And to just accept the state's bulldozing of our local zoning, I don't think that's appropriate for us. We're doing a job by preservation. But I really mean that. I would like to hear what the benefit is to compliance. Can anybody answer that?
I'll speak to it. So, first of all, as someone mentioned, I think Mr. West, and it's been mentioned repeatedly, in which we are certainly well aware of, the MBTA Communities Act, Section 3A, is being litigated. Mm-hmm. It's in front of the Supreme Judicial Court. Oral arguments in that case are going to occur on October 7th. And so, by probably the beginning of next year, we'll know whether or not the SJC has upheld all of this law or parts of this law based on the Milton challenge. And that was the Hamilton amicus brief that was referenced, which was filed the other day. We took a vote not to file one. We took an affirmative vote not to file one. And I'm happy to explain at least my reasoning for that if anybody wants to know. But as of right now, it is the law of the Commonwealth. The SJC may decide something differently. And I do think that there's some sense to the position of waiting until the SJC issues its decision, because it is a pending issue, even though the law's in effect, even though the Attorney General has said that she's going to enforce the law. It is a pending issue. So I don't disagree with the people that have suggested that there's some sense in waiting to see what the SJC does. There's, logistical consequences that would come along with that we would need to grapple with as a board. But I think, to your question, Tom, about what are the benefits of compliance, I'm not sure that it's exactly the right question. I think that the legislature, our representatives, pass laws. As I mentioned at the last meeting, this one passed unanimously in the state Senate. It passed something like 143 to 4 in the House. So all of our representatives passed this Massachusetts statute. It's a statute. We don't pick and choose which, as people who take oaths to serve in these positions and to faithfully execute the laws of the U.S. and the state, we don't get to pick and choose which laws to follow. And as I've said before, the people in our town government, the planning board and the planning department, have been working diligently to try to come up with the least intrusive way to carry out a law. So to me, that's a main reason why we've been on the track that we've been on. But I do agree, as I said, with the notion that there's a major decision that's going to be coming down from the state's highest court within the next 5 months roughly, and that may very well drive what we want to do. But I'm just speaking as one member.
So is there any possibility of following Hamilton and putting it on the actual town meeting, the vote, instead of, because then you would know where things stand?
You mean in the annual town meeting?
Yeah.
Well, I think, as of now, it's scheduled for a special town meeting in November, and we would have to vote to change that. So that's right. A discussion point that's not on the agenda for tonight, by the way.
But I understand.
It's, but it's something that maybe we would want to consider.
Yeah.
Whether that would mean that it would go to the annual town meeting, it might, just based on the practicalities of timing. So one other point that somebody made about 40B. I'm not sure if people in the audience are aware of this, but Wenham is at 12.5% on this 40B subsidized housing inventory. And as you may know, 10% is the threshold on 40B. I litigate 40B cases all over the Commonwealth on various sides. But does anybody think that, everyone is here in the room, I think, agrees at how wonderful it is to be in Wenham and how great it is in Wenham, and people talk about preserving Wenham. Wenham exceeds the 40B threshold. And do any of you think that Wenham is a terrible place to live because we have 12.5% 40B housing? I don't think that. So the 40B boogeyman has always been that. And I think there's an element of that with respect to 3A as well. When people say the townspeople won't stand for this, what is the this that people are talking about? When a lot of the elements of
1,500 new people into our town.
that's a misconception. That's a complete misconception.
No, it's not.
So,
No, it's not.
yeah, no, it is.
No, it's not.
So, I think that one of the important considerations for the citizens to have when they make the vote at town meeting will be, has this law been endorsed by the SJC? So that is something that right now is an uncertainty. Well, I don't want it to be, I don't necessarily want, the chair runs the meeting, so I don't want to have this become a.
No, we're not going to go back and.
Oh, no, it's not. I was going to go back. It was just a comment I was going to make about home rule. You talk about the legislature passes a statute, which of course is true. But it's quite common in states to have states and governors sign a statute and then have that be in conflict with the constitution of that state. As we all know, home rule is an amendment to the Constitution. So it's part of our Constitution, and one of the base rock things about that is zoning. And to have us giving that up is something that I personally feel is intrusive by the state. And you may not feel that way, I don't know. I'm not horrified by 40B either. I think 40B's done some good things for a lot of people. You know, the 10% is something I think that's worked out. It's given access to public schools that children who couldn't have access to public schools before could have, and come to places like Wenham, and come to places like Weston, where I used to live, and get in some of the best schools, Dover, Sherburne, all the great places to have the kids go to school. And I think 3A could be part of that too. I just think the numbers are so big. These are 350, well, I won't get off on a tangent because I said to you I wouldn't, but I think your argument is a good argument, except that it is common for legislatures to pass statutes, be signed by governors, and then have somebody sue them saying it's unconstitutional, and the Supreme Judicial Court in that state will then overturn it. And that's what I hope happens here.
Right, and the SJC is going to make a decision and within 6 months.
Yes, Mr. Chair?
And the only thing I want to say is, please go back and read the Q&A, okay? Because there are significant resource issues that block being able to build all those units.
No, I think, yeah, thank you for that. I'm not even, I will read about that, because I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, so I'm gonna have to try to.
Think water.
Think water, okay.
Just go back, please, read the Q&A.
Can we let Tom finish his statement? And
Yeah.
Again, for the extra time.
Thank you.
You know, we've discussed water with other developments too, like the Gordon College site and things like that, and it never really gets to, well, it hasn't gotten to the point where I've seen that stop anything, really, but maybe it will. But I wanted to ask you, Ben, I thought, what you said is certainly something I agree in, that the state passes statutes, and I like to comply with statutes, and I appreciate that you do too. But at the same time, they my understanding is the state said, well, if you don't comply, meaning I guess you don't have to comply, then you won't get certain kinds of funding, which from what I understand, we don't get that funding anyway. So in other words, what would be the consequence if we didn't comply, other than not being having this funding be available to us?
Answer, if I can. I mean, Governor Healy has gone on record, and you.
Okay.
Okay, you know what?
Excuse me.
We do have to be recognized by the chair, please, ladies and
Allow
gentlemen.
the board to speak. He's actually responding to questions, and I would ask that the people in the back are please quiet so that the public can hear and so that we can hear what's being said. Thank you.
So Governor Healy, who, as you know, didn't sign this law, it was signed by Governor Baker in 2021, has gone on record to say that there is likely to be an expansion of the types of state aid that would be encompassed within this penalty. So we don't know what's going to happen. And again, the highest court in the state is going to issue a decision, and we'll know a lot more about the consequences for breaking the law after that, as well as what parts of the law maybe aren't going to be enforced.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else want to specifically?
I'm boxed in, so I'm not going to go to the podium. I'm Elizabeth West, Walnut Road.
Wait, hold on. We have a lot of folks online that won't be able to hear you or see you, so if there's a way that you can get up, that would be great. We'll give you a minute. Michelle, can you also check that we have folks online?
There's none with hands up.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
Elizabeth West, Walnut Road, thank you for a thankless job you're performing. Just two things. I obviously backed my husband up. And I'm just wondering why you didn't file the brief, because you were indicating you were willing to give us that, your thoughts on that. And also, it would seem at the very least that we could put the vote off, because there's a lot of questions that we need more time on. And in whose hands does that decision lie, to put the vote off? Is that yours?
I think we're going to talk about it.
It's in the hands of the board?
Probably at the next meeting. But.
Yeah.
And just about the brief, what's your thought on that?
Well, I mean, I think we had an open discussion about that. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I didn't think it was a very good use of the town's resources to invest in an amicus brief, which, as a litigator, I know, frankly, has very little impact. Especially at the SJC. And so that was a primary reason. And I have other reasons as well that I don't want to elaborate on right now. But that was I think, the general thinking was it wasn't really a prudent deployment of town resources.
All right, thank you.
How's it going? My name's Peter Mugford. I live at 69 Walnut Road. My family's been in the community for 60 years. I've grown up in town. I'm here tonight because I feel like there's just so much missing information from like my generation. Like we know very little about what's going on. So there's the data that Mr. West described for the town meeting. I think would be so helpful for everyone. Like how many units is it? You know, we've heard 3,000 units, we've heard 2,000 units. Has the town actually commissioned a study where we can make an informed decision versus a few of you that, you know, might be litigators, but for everyone that's in the community, it's been in this community for a very long time, to say this is good for this community versus saying that it's a natural resource issue that it will never go forward. Like, has the town commissioned any type of study that would tell us how many units exactly it would be?
Yes.
And how many units would that be?
You can ask the planning board. It's all there. Go to the website. All the information is on the planning board's site.
Can I make
And also,
yeah.
as part of the master plan process, there was a number of economic analyses done.
If I may, Mr. Chair, and just to elaborate on what the chairman said, so the Q&A that was referenced, which is on the planning department or planning board website, goes through some of that. The planning board has worked for 2 years to come up with the proposal that may or may not be presented with a recommendation to special town meeting. And as I think everyone in the room knows by now, there are 2 properties that have been potentially slated for rezoning to comply with 3A. One is behind Crosby's and in the train station. The proposal is 13 units per acre, which could mean, if it were fully developed, around 80 units. Fewer if it's mixed use. So that's what could emerge at that location. And then the second site is Boulder Lane, of which the town of Wenham owns about 40% of the acreage. And so the town of Wenham, just like if your property were to be rezoned in some way, you're the owner of your property. It doesn't mean that someone comes in and builds an apartment on your property, obviously. Mm-hmm. You're the owner, you get to decide. You might sell it to somebody that wants to do that. But the town of Wenham is the owner of a very substantial portion of Boulder Lane. I may have gotten it mixed up. It may be 60% that we own, 40 privately. It's a notoriously difficult site to develop. I believe the proposal is 15 units per acre. Again, people have been talking about developing Boulder Lane for many years, and it hasn't happened. But those are the 2 sites that are proposed for rezoning, and a lot of that is specified in the Q&A document, as well as presentations that the planning board has done, slide decks and the like that are on the town website.
So the Winthrop School site would not be another identified site for this?
Well, that's Hamilton. And
sorry.
Yeah, and so Hamilton is further behind Wenham. Some people seem to like that fact, that Hamilton has lagged a bit on it. Whether you like it or you don't like it, they have not come up with a plan yet. Whereas our planning board, at least preliminarily, has. But I hasten to add that the planning board has not voted on a recommendation, nor have we.
And how many acres is Boulder Lane, just to put in perspective? Is it 50 acres, 100 acres?
I think it's somewhere in the mid-20s total.
I think it's mid-20s. And unfortunately, a lot of it's underwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then those 2 sites would put the town in compliance?
That's correct. That is the plan that the planning board has worked on, to say if 3A is going to be the law of the land, and if we, as a town, comply with it, this is a way to comply with it. And in my view, having looked at it pretty carefully, I think it's a relatively modest way to comply with it. But people will get to go to town meeting and vote on whether or not they agree.
And I agree with that approach. I think it should be left to the residents, taxpayers, to vote on where, the destiny of the town goes. And my last final question here is it all related to the MBTA stop with the train? Is that the big driver? If we gave up that train stop, would we have to comply?
That's why we're an MBTA. Yes, so the short answer to your question is yes. It's because Wenham has an MBTA stop in its town. It's one of the 90 or so.
Yeah, so what's
Commuter rail, commuter.
There's some town on the South Shore who said they're going to give up the train.
So I'm just asking it because could that ever be an option for the town? To look at the analysis, that analysis of what the impact
What's
is?
it going to do to your real estate prices?
I don't actually think it would impact it as much as you would think.
Well, even if there is no rail, Essex is an adjacent community too, so they also, all the adjacent communities to the rail have same 3A.
And they voted not to follow 3A, right?
Yeah, Essex, I thought, they're not doing it. So I'm just wondering, could that be a town vote where we could vote on whether to have the train stop or not?
No, that belongs to the MBTA, town has no influence at all on it.
I just wasn't sure if we weren't in compliance, and so we're not going to comply, and we had to give up the train stop, if that would be kind of...
I think if you step back and and I realize that passions are high here on this issue, but if you step back and you say, okay, we've got this proposal, and it's going to go in front of the town, and as I said, it's about rezoning 2 properties, and people may not want to do that. They may say, I don't care if we're going to be subject to potential loss of local aid down the road from the state. So people can make their decisions that way. But I think to say, let's close the commuter rail station, let's tell the MBTA, just keep the train going from Ipswich to North Beverly, we're going to shut down our MBTA station. I mean, is that really a sensible thing to do? I don't think so. I think that would impact many, many more people negatively than anything we're talking about on 3A.
Well, I think... I don't know if anyone here went to school in this community, but it's great to have small classrooms, right? My 2 kids go to school here. I think if you bring in an influx of all these people, it would impact the schools. And that's where I think people are overlooking it, just to have access to the commuter rail. I've loved it. My dad used to take it almost every single day. I don't know if it's utilized as it once was, to just look at that study, and if it was up to the townspeople, of the residents, to vote on it. That's all I'm saying, is to run that analysis as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add, for the folks wondering, I heard some comments that they couldn't find the Q&A on the planning board's website, so it's right here, just so you can kind of see when you're navigating the site yourself. You go to the planning board, and then on the left, this is what's going to come up, and you have the MBTA communities requirement for multifamily, and then you can see this link to Wenham's MBTA questions and answer document. So those are the most recent questions that I've heard a number of times tonight. That of the town's responses to those questions, also linking studies and things like that have also been requested tonight.
Are you from Wenham? Do you want to speak? I'm from Hamilton, so I don't want to stand in front of you.
If it's okay, I want to make a quick point. I'm Margaret Hoffman. I'm the town planner. I know some of you have seen me at these meetings. I just wanted to let everyone know, on September 26th, the planning board is having their public hearing on this zoning amendment. It's the process that they have to go to change zoning. All the information you need is on the website. It has the public hearing notice. Joe, I wonder, could you go back to the front page for 1 second? If you just go to wenhamma.gov, on the very front page, when you scroll down just a bit, see that link, MBTA Communities? Just click on that, and that brings you to this page. This has all of the information, has the public hearing notice, it has the draft of the zoning bylaw amendment, and it has the map with the proposed new districts. So you should be able to get all the information you need on that. Thanks. Just wanted to clarify.
Tosh Blake, Sagamore Street, Hamilton. First, I'd like to thank you, at least for allowing some back and forth and answering some questions, to the best of your ability. I do appreciate that, and giving extra time to people. I think that has been helpful, as much as we've been able to do. I'd like to go back, refer to something that Tom Stark mentioned. I think he asked a question. He said, in general, what are the benefits of 3A? Mr. Timon, you addressed it, but I believe you sidestepped the question. You didn't answer what was the benefits possibly to Wenham or Hamilton of 3A. You addressed what are the benefits of following the law if it comes down by the state, which is not the same concern. My opinion, if a bad law comes down and you have the ability to do something about it, one thing you failed to do is file an amicus brief like Hamilton has, which has not yet been explained, at least not in this forum. Maybe you've explained it previously or you're going to explain it. Otherwise, of course, we are waiting the pending Supreme Judicial Court case. Obviously, it's prudent to wait until that's done, until having any kind of vote for the town. I'd say if you really want to protect the town and you're serving the town, you'd even should have the mentality that the Supreme Court of the United States could be the last stop instead of the Massachusetts court. But I am seeing from public officials, no one's defending 3A in general. It's more of a procedural defense. Well, we have to move the process forward. I hear that in Hamilton. Here you're saying, it's the law, but it's obviously a bad law. It's not being forced as written by the legislature. So Charlie Baker may have signed a law inadvisedly, I'd say, and that the law said one thing at the time. Now there are guidelines coming down that change the law to something completely different, and there are threats coming from the state. I think as representatives of Wenham, you should be jealously guarding the interest of the people of Wenham, and you should be looking to the courts to do that and not complying or playing along with the state, which is basically saying we are taking jurisdiction over a significant chunk of your town as far as zoning goes. And other town officials, I heard, I think it was maybe the head of the planning board, she kind of maddeningly refers it to as a exercise in zoning. It's not an exercise. It's going to have real impact. That's why a lot of people, from the governor, the attorney general, the legislature, and you guys are all spending hours and hours and hours talking about it. If it's just an exercise, if it wasn't going to have an impact because you can't develop anything anyway, to me those are really disingenuous kind of sort of ways of minimizing it. No one's going to spend time on it if you didn't think there's going to be change. So I say, if you're saying there's not enough water, we don't have the infrastructure, why would you even bring it to the public? It's obviously a bad idea, and if you're saying it's not even practical in the first place, it makes no sense to spend time debating it. And I'd say you should just take it to the court and resist it, but you're not doing that, and you're saying you're remaining neutral. But the suspicion is there may be ideological reasons to bring it forward from people in your position, but no one's defending it, so it's very strange. There's a gap between anyone saying 3A is good. No one's saying that. I don't hear from you. You sidestepped the question. You says, well, you have to follow the law. If the law's bad, don't follow it. You don't want to get close to some sort of what do you call a Nuremberg defense. Well, the higher authority said do it, so we should do it. I don't agree. If it's wrong, you shouldn't do it. Thank you.
That's it.
Is there anyone else? Anyone else?
Check the screen just one last time.
Is there anybody?
No, not online.
All right. So good discussion. Obviously, a big issue. I think the really good question is special town meeting or regular town meeting. And so we'll have that on the agenda for next meeting, because then all this stuff goes away. All right, so let's move on to B. So we're talking about a presentation by Peter West of Peter West Designs on Town Branding Initiative. Public input allowed for 20 minutes if you're interested. Where's Peter Wright? Peter right here? I mean, I saw his...
She went to get him. He's outside. He's outside. She went to get him.
Those are pretty cool scrubs.
Oh, that's me. I was like, who said that?
Just pull up that pretty.
Oh,
Okay, can you grab the door, please? Thank you.
Anytime you're ready to go.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Peter West. I'm a freelance creative director with a background in advertising, art direction, and graphic design. If you want to go to the next slide there. I've spent the better part of the last 20 years doing work with Microsoft, Amazon, Uber, various brands, anywhere, doing projects from anything from branding to website design, advertising, social media marketing, and now I find myself here helping you with a new logo design. So next slide, please. These are just some quick examples of the work I've done in the past. If you go to the next slide, just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I love the little small town that you have. I grew up in New England, so I have a soft spot for small New England towns, living in Amesbury myself. So, but I have this deck of questions that really is just meant to dig in and formulate a conversation with you all around the town of Wenham, excuse me, the visitors, the residents, and what you all are really looking for out of a logo. It's broken up into 3 sections: the town of Wenham, the current visual identity, and then design preferences moving forward. You can go to the next slide there. So just to start out, I'd love to hear from you all what Wenham is known for and what you want to be known for moving forward into the future.
I'll start off then. I think when, as far as the branding, we'd be looking for something that would perhaps recognize our historical aspects, whether it's, Wenham Ice or Hugh Peter or other portions of the town. But I think generally, too, that if you look at today's identity, that to not focus on just a suburban bedroom community, but perhaps on the unique green spaces and history that we have.
Great. Thank you, Gary.
Second question, I would say what we want to be known for is, again, the quality of life here with the focus. There's probably some unique aspects of Wenham related to the history, but also the fact that, we're fairly well surrounded by dense urban areas, and we're kind of a unicorn along with Hamilton, maybe Raleigh, being a little bit different.
Great. Anyone else?
I say ditto.
Okay. We want to move on to the next slide.
So, hold on.
Oh, thanks. I'll say ditto as well. The only thing I might add to what do we want to be known for, and I think to some degree what we are known for, is that we're welcoming. I think we have a leadership in the town and in our civic organizations and in our schools that is welcoming to anybody who wants to participate. I don't think that we are known in the area as the town that wants to pull up the drawbridges and say nobody else can come in. I think that we actually want to welcome people to the town, and that we welcome diversity in the town of various types. And so I think that is something that maybe sets us a little bit apart as well.
Thanks, Benjamin.
So I would mimic everything that both Gary and Ben have said. Additional to that is that I would love to be known for having a more green town, not only in physical landscapes, but our technology and our approach for that. As someone who moved here a little over a decade ago to start a family, we're very family oriented. We spend a lot of time and resources on ensuring that our children are safe and that we have provided them an amazing education. Through some of the conversations tonight, you can see people are extremely passionate about not only the landscape that we have here, but our kids.
Yep.
And I think that that's important. People want to work here. People want to live here. People want to raise a family here.
Great. If there's no other comments, we can move to the next slide.
I would just add natural resources, I think open space, and a healthy living, essentially. There's a big focus on open space, walkability, bikeability, people's ability to live in a healthy way in this town and take advantage of all of the resources.
And then really, what are the strengths
There's
of...
a comment
sorry.
from the public.
Yes, we're the only town, excuse me, as far as education goes, at one time, it was written in Boston Globe, we were the best. We're the only, I believe, the only consolidated two towns together have a library, number one, and a school system. And that's why people will move here. The schools, the education. It's, like you said, it's the open, it's the fields that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was brought up in a city. I could never live in a city, ever. Look at the open space that we got. You know, off of Rubley Road, we got the soccer fields there. Oh my God. You got Pingree. You got Patton Park. I mean, close by, you got Rolldale. You got Bradley Palmer. I mean, this is what we moved here.
Great. The next question is really just around strengths and weaknesses. These are really open-ended questions, just meant to drive conversation and dig into the town itself. So.
I think one of our weaknesses is our tax rate. We're very high. And we've done an economic analysis, and there's no amount of commercial development that we could do to really make a difference in the tax rate.
Which kind of translates into the strength that, you know, we have a minuscule commercial area, which is really just a couple of shops. So it is, you know, we have pretty much avoided all the commercial, industrial, and all those other legacies. So it's certainly a strength, I think.
Mm-hmm.
One word that we haven't been using in the last two slides is our ability to be an amazing community. We strive to help one another, stand up for each other, and that's something that you want to live in a town where the community is feeling that camaraderie.
Yeah, that's great.
I'd add that for a town as small as Wenham, because I think by population we're the either second or third smallest town in Essex County. I think Nahant and West Newbury and us, I think, vie for the smallest population. I'm not sure if that includes Gordon College students or not, but in any event, we really punch above our weight for the size of our town in terms of our civic organizations. So we have the Wenham Museum right over there. We have the Wenham Village Improvement Society, which is, you know, a fun name to remember because it sounds so old, and it is an old organization that does a lot of great things and owns the Wenham Tea House across the street and runs great programs. We have some of those really vibrant civic organizations in concert with Hamilton, like the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club. And I'm sure I'm missing a lot, but for a town of our size, I think we really have an impressive number of civic organizations.
That's great.
Yeah, I'd add the community house.
Right, thank you. Yeah, the community house, Hamilton Wenham, yep.
Anyone else? can move on. So really wanting to dig in a little bit to why people come to visit and why people choose to live here. I'm sure there's some overlap between those things. And, you know, a lot of what I'm hearing applies to this question too, but if there's anything that you haven't already mentioned.
I should think the visit, probably if you're talking tourist end, it's the Wenham Museum is probably the #1 draw, which basically is, again, family, children focused, and history of the town focused. So those two aspects probably bring the, visitors in. And I would say on the second side, people live here. I think the open space, and it's quiet, peaceful, cooperative, family-oriented, and so forth.
Good schools.
Good schools.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. So I'm curious what you and other visitors might, how they might describe the town in 5 words or less.
Hidden gem.
That's a good one, yeah.
There you go.
You might just unicorn, something like that, where, exceptional when compared to other communities throughout the state.
I really like Hidden Gem. That's a good one.
Great.
Yeah, and we did this exercise as part of the master plan process, so there were a whole lot of words that were generated in the meetings in a box about what words people would use to describe the town. So there were a lot of things like quiet, peaceful, bucolic, beautiful, scenic.
Margaret has the whole
vistas.
list, right?
Yes, somewhere there's a
Great.
There's a
I
compiled
do have the
list.
master plan too, so I'll dig into that a little bit more.
Kate, you have that too, right?
It was part of the community engagement, so I think specifically in the results from the meeting in a box, because this was asked specifically.
Sure. Great. We can go to the next slide. And I'm curious what I've heard about the museum and the tea house, and if there's anything that has not been mentioned yet, what would like the top 5 places in the town be to come and visit?
The Audubon trails at Cedar Pond.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also did the Larch Row.
The Larch Row trails.
Yeah, I kept going. I mean, until I did hit Beverly.
What was that trail?
Well, you got multiple, because you got the Railster Trail, you got the Audubon, you have trails over by Gordon College, towards Tobacco Road, so maybe trails in general is the
outdoor
answer.
Outdoor spaces, yeah.
Yeah, Wenham Swamp.
Wenham Swamp, yes.
Great.
Pleasant Pond. This was also listed in the meeting in a box from the master plan.
Great.
It's a good one. Pleasant Pond.
We can go to the next slide. And you've kind of already answered some of these questions, but if we go down this bulleted list here, like which one of these words would you associate more with the town? I'm thinking it's more historical, more friendly, down to earth, communal, but is there something else that should be considered?
Down to earth as far as mentality, high end as far as real estate.
Okay.
So that's a tough I mean,
split there.
That's
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
fair enough.
I wouldn't call it a down to earth economical
Okay.
residential situation. There is a question that wasn't asked on your slides, and it's not necessarily the 5 places that you would go to from a perspective of visiting, but it's more of the 5 events or the 5 activities. And this town is extremely community-based when it comes to, we were talking about today, when it comes to Veterans Affairs, when it comes to engaging in the community on a regular basis, whether it's a DEI activity, or whether it is a Memorial Day ceremony or things like tomorrow. The entire town will step up and make sure that not only are we celebrating in the right tone, but we are inclusive with everybody. So that is something that does need to be noted somewhere.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, we can go to the next slide then. So shifting gears a little bit just to the current brand, if you want to go to the next slide. Really just starting out with the seal and, you know, what information you can share about that. I'm sure that it is old, but, you know, if you have any information about the color choices, and I know a little bit about the Enon badge, but just curious what you all have to say about that.
But I think the seal, you know, the incorporation date is notable as we were the first town set off from Salem. That's always been in there, and the reference to Enon comes from Hugh Peter when the town was first established with, as still today, lots of water bodies around. And I think, you know, the blue there, I think, is representational of Wenham Lake. Otherwise, I think it's just a plain old seal.
Traditional seal.
Yeah, seal.
Enon, isn't that place of many waters?
Yes, biblical reference.
We can go to the next slide.
Just one quick thing to note too, and it may or may not, you know, be important for the branding, but the fact that we were incorporated in 1643, I know that Salem was incorporated a few years earlier than that, but we're definitely among the oldest towns in the area. So that's just something to, you know, make note of. I think that 1643 is pretty far back.
That's great.
And, a lot of our neighbors.
Is that, I was looking around outside, is that, like, what is the stone out front of the building? Is that one of the original cornerstones? Or?
No, the stone outside the building is the mile marker for the old Bay Road that went for the length of the state, north south.
Cool.
Coming out of Boston, the miles.
Great. And really just curious around, like, with your current visual identity that you have, what do you like and what you don't like about those aspects?
I think it's really drab. Just like, it doesn't pop.
In terms of color and...
Yeah.
Okay.
You got the whole ring around the outside, and then the Enon and the incorporated. You know, it's just really drab.
Is there anything that you do like about the seal?
I like the lake.
Great.
And the mountains or the hills. But even that's kind of that's just not a very good green. Behind you, over there, outside the seal, I mean, those are better colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we show Peter the flag with the current colors?
And that seal up there is an older rendition that more properly shows the hill there is where supposedly the first
yeah, that's much better.
Not settlement, but the first preaching was done.
Okay. And is that hill is at Wenham Lake, or?
Yeah, it's next to Wenham Lake, but no longer there because they took it down to build the ice houses.
Okay.
Which is another reference.
Is that on your list? Yes. Yeah, so I think it's important to tell Peter if we're gonna, is it mandated to stick with those colors, or are you guys open to different options?
I'll show them one more time.
Yeah, I think for the branding, you know, there's a positive to have a color scheme throughout, but also, you know, certainly we've seen some representations from other towns and cities that, you know, is totally different from what the color scheme is.
That's great, thank you.
Not drab.
Not drab. I underlined that one. We can go to the next slide here. Are there any, like, I mean, obviously, Peter, I know your feelings about it, but how do you like, when you think about your future logo, like how do you want that to make you feel as a town and a community?
So just one point of, sort of one question. Let me say, want our logo, how do we want our logo to look? So other than potentially using some of the same colors, there's really not going to be any relationship between the town seal and the logo, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was...
Yeah, I just included it in here because it seemed like the primary kind of visual design that you're using.
Say that again?
The logo that we're going to be looking at is something entirely separate from the town seal. So the town...
No, I don't...
You don't agree?
No.
Well, I mean, I don't think we can... I mean, the town seal is the town seal. I don't think we're able to change the town...
It's not incorporated or trademarked or anything? We can change, we can do anything we want to it.
Can we? Well, I guess we should figure out, are we changing the town seal, or are we coming up with a logo like Salem's that says, you know, Salem, changing history, that has the sail on the
Addition
witch's hat.
to, I think was.
Yeah, I think it's additive.
You wouldn't want to replace the seal itself with the logo, but you can add the...
I would like to make that less drab. So I'm not saying completely change it, but do something to that. Like, those colors are so much better.
I think we would need, I don't know this, and I don't think any of us have researched it. I think we would need at least town meeting approval to change the seal, and I think what we're doing is creating something new and additional, which we can do as part of this group, and hopefully the town will support, you know, I think we did a good job.
As opposed to 3A? Oh, my God.
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is kind of a logo that will be very distinctive, immediately identifiable to Wenham. You know, Salem has a good one, obviously, but and something that we can use throughout the town. You know, not on an official basis on stamping documents, but on you know, street signs or walkways or, you know, booklets, the town meeting booklets, annual town reports and stuff, something that we go, hey, yeah, without even reading it, you go, ah, yeah, that's from Wenham, because I recognize the logo.
Absolutely.
And I think we want it to make us feel proud.
Yep, I agree.
To create a town identity. I'm not sure that's the easiest thing to do in one logo, but I do think the colors blue and green are important because I think they're representative of the town in a physical sense, because we are 40% wetland and water bodies, because we are so green with historic vistas, and also figuratively because we aspire to be a sustainable green town on the cutting edge as best as we can in terms of green infrastructure, and as well as the concept of blue zone living in terms of healthy living and healthy lifestyles and walkability and access to good food, such as the downtown businesses that we have, as well as attention to historic resources, the museum as a sort of grounding location in the town.
Great. That's helpful, thank you.
It's funny because the logo on the front of your podium is better.
Yeah, the colors definitely come through more. We will certainly create something that'll help, you know, support the seal, but live separately from it. And then, you know, what do you all envision this logo helping you accomplish? Like, why create it? Why create it now? Like, where is that going to be helpful moving forward?
I think that between what Gary said and Deirdre said, to me that kind of covers it, because Gary talked about some of the ways it would be used. Deirdre talked about some of the things that it would exemplify.
I think it will hopefully make residents feel proud
Yeah.
to live here.
Civic pride.
Civic pride, that's better said.
Great. We can go to the next slide. And then finally, just design preferences. The next slide here. What colors do we want to use? We've been talking about that a lot. Should we keep using them? It sounds like yes, but are there any other colors to consider that come to mind when thinking about the logo?
I'll just take a picture of that flag.
Okay. Thanks.
What are the high school colors? Those are blue and white?
Yes.
Yes,
It's not silver?
Nope.
they look like the Cowboys, but it's the Generals.
Yeah, I just was wanting to ensure if they were silver, then we need to incorporate that potentially somewhere in there, but if it's white, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I don't think we want green uniforms.
No.
Are there any surrounding townships that you want to avoid using colors that they're already using for?
Well, Beverly's orange and black, so I don't think we need that one.
Right,
Or,
and Ipswich is orange and blue?
Purple?
Purple? And Essex, or Manchester Essex is green.
And what's Hamilton?
It's us. We're the same,
Blue and white.
You're right.
The school system, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, Ipswich is red and blue.
Thanks. Are there any elements of the seal that you would like to see transfer over to the logo itself, like the Enon badge or the Wenham Lake?
I think we'd be looking from unique ideas from you, something new.
Yep. Differentiate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of new residents have absolutely no idea what Enon is.
Okay.
I agree with what Gary said, but we're definitely looking to you, but one thought might be that 1643 maybe would be in the logo,
Yep.
especially if we're trying to convey the historical nature of the town.
Great. We can go to the next slide, thanks. And then what should this logo not be? Like, what are the restrictions? We've already kind of talked a little bit about it in terms of color, but if there's anything else that comes to mind. Certainly,
What, from others, what restrictions would you?
Well, I mean, these are extreme restrictions, but like, you don't like triangles, or, you don't like the color purple or something like that.
No magenta.
it's got to be classy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the opposite of not classy is, but
Great, thanks.
Avoid wild fonts.
There's a small part of me that thinks that we make this amazing, snazzy logo, and our hidden gem is then gone. We're enticing people to come into this community and saying we have this vibrant new approach in this green atmosphere. People are going to be excited about living here, and our hidden gem will.
The gem has to be hidden, not like in your face.
So don't do anything too great.
There's a line there. A little
Yeah. Like middle of the road.
yeah, we want to be sort of average.
Yeah, okay. Stay hidden. Right. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, thanks. And then just what defines success for you all with the logo, and how do we know if it works?
I think it will need acceptance by the community as a whole, individual references. I think successful logo also will be, as we said earlier, classy or something that can be proud of, that we would want to display on trail signs or, wherever.
How much of the community's pride is like associated with the ice, the ice story?
Not much.
I've lived here for 12 years. I've never heard it.
Okay.
So, yes, that.
Queen of England.
Queen Victoria.
You wanted her Wenham ice.
Pretty cool story.
So we thought about
I
the
heard
ice
today.
cube, but no,
That's
no
it.
ice cube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although we had that line too, the cool
I think
place.
that's the
Yeah,
last
that's-
slide. Happy discoveries, and thanks for having me. I really look forward to working with you all. The one final question is, like, at the end of the process, who is like responsible for approval or disapproval? Is it this
Us.
committee,
Us.
or is it the community,
I think we.
or a mix of both?
Kate, we're gonna like get the community to weigh in on this, right?
This was the time.
Right now.
Well, they'll.
Hey, Tom, thank you.
No, it'll be coming back with, at least
Yeah.
the way I understand it, with 3 to 5 examples or something like that, and then the community will have another chance to weigh in. But yeah, the deciding group is these 5 individuals right here.
Okay, yeah, I think the next
I'm
meeting
fine with that.
that I'll be here is 2 weeks from now, with like 3 to 5 options to choose from.
Great.
And then we can make additional changes to that after. Mhm.
So I actually worked with a British agency, and they would come in and they'd say, here it is. And we're like, what other ideas do you have? No, this is it. But
Well, hopefully
it
we
didn't
won't
work.
We're not going to do that.
Tom wants to comment.
Tom?
So, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt because I thought the presentation was really good. You asked all the right questions. I did have another question that's a little bit different than the global question, and that is, who is the audience for it? Is it a tourism, is it tourists primarily? Is it home buyers? Is it developers? If it's developers, is it home developers, commercial development? I got hints about things.
I would see it as in a more internal, this is our community, this is our logo, this is what we use to identify ourselves around the town. I don't see that we're ever going to be a tourist destination other than a nice museum, but I think it's an identity badge that we can use.
Kate?
I think also we're really working towards implementing the master plan soon, Tom.
Right.
And so this logo is really based towards the residents, to get residents excited about this next new 10 years. So this is part of it. So a lot of it is for the residents.
But it is a branding exercise, so I think it's also about visitors and tourism, such as it is. We're not going to be a huge, we're not going to be Newburyport, but certainly some increased visitation would be great for the museum and to keep some of our organizations alive, some of our new shops, the tea house, to keep these places vibrant and in business. Some degree of tourism would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think.
So I think it's both.
Community it was to
Yes.
me before I moved here, so I appreciate that.
Right.
And I also appreciate the fact that, I work in Boston and people ask me where I live and nobody's ever heard of it.
Right.
Do you take the train?
Yeah.
I do. I don't want to get rid of.
Should we get rid of it?
Well,
Never mind, don't even know.
Last time I took the train, I had to drive to Beverly and get the Rockport train because the Newburyport train was stuck in Raleigh and never came. But, you know, don't get me started, but I wish Governor Baker, when he was considering this MBTA, you know, deal, which I think makes a lot of sense to put housing near the train stations, it would have been good if he invested in the trains. Anyway,
Yeah.
but I have some other questions, so, just briefly. So, you know, I found that there are a lot of city examples like Salem that have branded themselves. So really, I couldn't find any towns that didn't just use their seal, you know, except I happen to know of Yarmouth. I don't know if you're familiar with that case, but just in the last year, Yarmouth updated its seal. So Peter, it's kind of like what you were talking about. So just, you should be aware of it. So they really just cleaned it up. They had an issue where, you know, it was kind of murky, right? They brightened the colors and clarified the type easier to read and things like that. So my question was going to be, is that the direction going in kind of that way or something new? It sounds like we don't want to do that, but, you know, but it can be done. It made the thing look, you know, much better kind of, you know, that town had a different problem. It had, part of its seal was crowded with a Native American and something else. So like the state seal, you know, they're not sure they should have a Native American, so they rearranged elements. But, you know, for what it's worth, you might want to look at that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Tom, there are actual local towns.
Sorry?
There are local towns. Specifically, when I was taking a look at some of them, Lexington has one, focuses really on the Minutemen. And so outside of their town seal, they have a logo. Burlington also does too. They focus on their Red Devils. And so
I think Concord does too.
yeah, so there are individual smaller towns in the area that do have outside of their logo, outside of their seal.
I mean, like they have that little Minuteman guy, and they, one of the other towns, I think Concord has like a spire or something like that, but they didn't really have like a logo with a tagline, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I know
Burlington
just
does,
did
but
it.
Burlington also has a very large commercial
Yeah.
presence.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt. Amesbury does as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and you know, just for a really radical thing to just think about, you know, what it could say, you know, the most famous one is I Love New York, right? It's for this whole state, but, you know, it's hugely successful.
Is what? Sorry, I love.
I Love New York.
Oh,
You know, it's
yeah.
I Heart
Yeah.
New York, which, you know, then got used for everything. It was a really radical approach, but, you know, could be interesting.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tom. That's all I have. So thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you,
Look forward to
Peter.
working with
Thank you. So South Carolina, on their license plate, it says, "When I breathe, I hope." What the heck?
What town was that, sir?
State of South Carolina.
When I breathe, I hope.
Yeah.
I breathe.
Morbid.
Or the all-time
It's on their
classic
license.
mediocrity is Oklahoma. Oklahoma is okay.
That's cute.
That's a winner.
It took me a minute to
That's
get that.
fun.
I know people look at the Jersey place that says the Garden State, and people are like, what? Well, actually, yeah, there's a lot of gardens there. Jersey vegetables are the best. All right, so we move on.
Great.
Discuss the potential vote to adopt updated job descriptions for job titles. Executive Assistant to the Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, Assistant Town Accountant, Assistant Assessor, Council on Aging Director, Permitting Coordinator, Clerk's Office Administrative Assistant. So I read all those job descriptions. It's amazing how much you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, and, you know, in our efforts to bring the town into the 21st century, I want to just say thank you to the staff and to Steve to, as I said, real professional work here of identifying exactly what we're looking for in the positions and what they actually do.
That's why I give Joe.
Now I know what-
He was kind of, he led the project, so.
Now I know what Joe does.
All right.
We've all-
No one
let me
knew.
know.
Joe does everything. Really.
He's the HR guy. He's the IT guy.
Try my best.
So I had given Joe just a couple of typos, but certainly like these. Very nice.
Discussion?
We can count the number of bullets. I think Michelle wins.
So I move to adopt, what?
I wanted to comment too.
Okay, all right. Well, you were
I wasn't sure what was going on. I think they're great. I think they're very well done. I would like to just work on a couple of them. I mentioned this to Steve. I just didn't have time to send some edits. It's not really about substance of the functions. It's more just about organization of a couple of them for clarity, because there is so much in the job description, and harmonizing a little bit more between the scope and the actual list of responsibilities. So it's not a ton, and it's not really substantive on the functions.
It's not like this is pressing. So we can-
Right,
Right.
right. So
we'll
I
give
just
you
like
the
a little
time.
more time to
Totally
tweak a
cool.
couple of them, organizationally, really, not
So
functionally.
that on the 24th, in 2 weeks, good to go?
Yes.
Great.
Good.
All right, discussion on ARPA projects, IT appropriation, iron rail septic system replacement.
ARPA spreadsheet. Do you mind pulling it up? The ranked ones.
What? The what?
Ranked ARPA spreadsheet.
Is the MBTA vote the only reason why we're having a special town meeting?
We're getting there.
Yeah, hold on. Hold that thought.
Okay, no, I'm reading it.
Oh, is it the next one?
Yes.
Oh,
We have to do ARPA, though.
Okay, yes.
ARPA first.
We'll ARPA.
See, Michelle.
While we get it up, Steve, it seemed like a long ways away back then, but the opera deadlines is December 31st, 25
Yes.
of 25. And that's
24.
24. That's
3
to
months.
commit the money, but there's another year to actually spend it out, right?
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is, well, essentially we're scrambling to make sure that we have signed contracts or agreements to do work with these funds, because that's what the federal government is going to
Stop sharing yours.
consider committing the funds, is signing an agreement of some sort. They didn't specifically say what the agreement had to be. So this is really, I wanted to give, well, a couple things. I wanted to give the board an update on the opera projects, which is effectively they've all been done, with the exception of the town hall HVAC.
Which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, the IT is in progress and committed, but with that, when we originally designed these projects, or originally came up with the projects, and the number amounts associated with the projects, the thought was that we were going to replace the data center, our server, with an in-kind replacement, so a physical server solution, which was costing out in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000 plus, and just doing our due diligence and exploring our options, it became very clear that a virtual solution through the North Shore Collaborative that is hosted in a virtual environment in Danvers, where the physical location is much more advantageous for the community. But in addition, it was a much lower cost, but it also freed up money to move forward with installing our fiber ring. So we're installing the fiber ring that connects all the town hall buildings, as you guys are aware, and it also will tap into the North Shore Collaborative fiber ring, which connects probably 7 or 8 communities up here on the North Shore and growing. But with that said, we're probably going to have about $100,000 left over to spend. I don't know exactly, but I guess having money to spend is a good thing, but the bad thing is we got 3 months to figure it out. Yep, good.
Where are we with appropriating funds to back pay for COVID for our fire and police?
All right, I'll get to that. That's a good question. And so that will tie into, and then the additional, so let's just say we have an extra $100,000 there. And that is a discussion we have to take place, and I'm open for feedback and kind of guide on, what direction we go. Is the iron rail septic needs to be done. However, it's limping along. There's a lot of unknowns there. It's $100,000. So we're kind of wrestling with, we've put it on hold since day one, and we're here at the 11th hour, and we're still not necessarily sure what we're going to do with the iron rail. So that's another unknown.
Excuse me for a second.
So you have probably a couple $100,000 in excess ARPA funds coming into the deadline. So luckily, the community, the select board, and they reached out to the community. We had a online monkey survey that we did, and the select board put together, I believe it was like 20 projects or 23 projects that they vetted a whole number of projects. They came up with kind of their final 23. They put it out to the residents to get their feedback through SurveyMonkey, and then they took that feedback and then combined it with their own kind of intimate knowledge of the needs of the community, and came up with this ranking that you see here in front of you. So these projects are the final 23 ranked in order of importance, and importance based on how to prioritize spending the money and the needs in the community. So right now we're spending down to Project 12, which is West Wenham Phase 1 infrastructure, and that was effectively the cutoff for all the money. And now, Karen, to your question, where are we with funding the 13 and 14? So if there was extra money and the board decided, that it wanted to just continue working on down the list, if, as we get another month, we'll have some really true reconciliations of what we're going to have left over. That could be a possibility, right? Extending it, just moving down the list to 13, because 13 and 14 are fire and police. So they are next on the list from ranking.
And from a retention standpoint, where are we in ranks of being one of the only towns that have not supplied our police and fire with COVID ARPA funds? I mean, all of the towns surrounding have given the police that, the individual officers, so Topsfield, Danvers.
Yeah, a lot of
Hamilton.
communities did.
So what is the percentage of towns that have, and why haven't we chosen to do that?
I can't speak to why we haven't, because it was a board decision, but I can say that it is an accurate statement that it seems like a majority of communities, at least in the North Shore, did opt to provide some incentive.
Okay.
That's right. So I don't know if you have any feedback with the iron rail. We're definitely going to have some money. Some might have to go towards West Wenham Park, because West Wenham Park we couldn't really fully fund at the 170, but we're going to try our best to be diligent and free up what we can. So, some will have to fill that hole, and then I can almost guarantee there's going to be some money that we're going to have to appropriate. Rich has offered, if he says that, he has a lot of contracts that are, openly bid contracts, so he can do work quickly, infrastructure work. So if that, that's a place that if we wanted to put the money towards, it's certainly appropriate use for the ARPA funds.
And some of these, as we go 13 below, some of these are already done or become overcome by events. So
that's a good point.
So if you look at the lost rental income at Iron Rail, that's really a history thing. The 100th anniversary at the museum has gone by. We've got the water study going, right? Number 20 there. The water system was funded.
I have to confirm with Eric. I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
referencing the same study.
Okay.
I think that the study we're looking at now is of water, like a secondary water supply that goes through Hamilton and Wenham.
Could we get, for a future meeting, could we get pricing on the COVID premium?
Well, that's whatever you want, you know, $1 an hour or 1,000 or whatever. That'd be, I think it'd be just a round number divided up by proportionally.
It wasn't that expensive when I discussed
Yeah.
it with the chief. It was roughly in the $20,000 range per department. You're not looking at overarching
Right.
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. But presumably there's sort of like an average amount per officer that other towns have.
Yeah, so essentially what had happened is that each town was allocated a certain amount, and one of the first things they did is they went and they paid their officers who put themselves on you know, the front lines during COVID. And Wenham has now truly been one of the only towns in Massachusetts, especially in the North Shore, that has not paid their departments at all, which is upsetting.
One of the issues that came up at the time, though, when we're doing this, was where to draw the line, because you know, you had not only the fire and police, but you certainly had the Board of Health, the health agents, as well as maintenance workers that were out in the front line too. And at the time, compared to the other categories, the dollar figure was getting to be fairly large. And I think at the time too, there was wide range of opinions on both the board and from the survey, if I remember, that the reason it ended up there was a whole lot of zeros and a whole lot of 100%, if you would, on some of these, including, if I remember, the pay one.
Surveys are hard with the pay because you are very quickly able to say, all right, that's passed, let's just move forward. So inevitably, the people answering a survey to allocate money for something that has already occurred, it's going to receive a lower rating as far as the public goes. But as far as retention goes, it is a complaint that Wenham is not putting the effort into the departments as they should.
So we did the HVAC at the library too? That's off the list?
Yes. That HVAC was in our capital plan.
And we got extra money from the state for the paving, right, this year?
Yep.
So what are we really at? We got premium pay, we got culvert work ready to go, or?
Yeah, we have a lot of.
We got DPW
We have a lot
work.
of paving, well, DPW, culvert work, drainage, stormwater, all that stuff. He has a ton, you know, he could go for millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
So, you know, that's not a question. It's really, but to your point, the HVAC is off the list. You know, a lot of it, like the lost rental income for Iron Rail, lost income from local receipts, lost income from economic impacts from local aid and taxes, all would be a more than likely a budgetary, like operational budgetary offset, and to free up money to make a contribution to the stabilization fund. It's the idea of it being there is saying that the town effectively lost money that would have otherwise contributed to its free cash and allowed us to contribute to our stabilization, because just a simple example is excise tax went from $800,000 a year to $500,000 a year through COVID because people weren't buying new cars. There was logistics. You couldn't get a new car, so we had impacts in our revenue stream that would have otherwise been able, if COVID didn't hit, like what would that $500,000 over that 300 period the town would have brought in otherwise? Where would that have gone to town infrastructure? So that's the idea of the lost revenue replacement. It's not just to take money and put it away. To be like, what would the town have been doing? Would you have spent more on your capital plans at town meeting? Would you have built out your stabilization fund? That's the idea of those.
Can you scroll down just for the last few? So what we really have remaining is premium pay, DPW projects, expecting that the water system study has been funded by the water department, and the scuba gear we did have already done too, right? Number 21.
No, I don't know. That's the fill station.
Oh, that's the fill station.
But we're talking. We might be able to. I want to speak out of turn, but we might be able to combine with Hamilton and that because it's really we got two relatively small departments, and these self-breathing fill stations are clearly a lot of money, so they're made to do like some serious volume of filling.
And where are we on the jaws of life? As someone who witnessed the jaws of life outside of my house on Topsfield Road.
Those are all purchased.
They were all purchased.
That was one of the first things.
Those are up there. Yeah, those are purchased.
So really, you got contribution to the Wenham Museum, town revenue put in another pot, DPW, and premium pay. You got four categories from the original list left, right?
Yes, sounds accurate.
And about 200,000? 100 to 200?
Yeah, I'd say 100 to 200 is probably a fair, depending on what we decide to do with, or you guys decide to do with.
And all those four we could get in compliance with the federal rules, contract-wise, right, in the next 90 days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And the pay, we don't need approval for that.
but we need pricing. We need pricing so we know what else we can do.
The select board would have to take the vote in that situation. The select board would have to take a vote on a dollar amount before December 31st. Essentially authorizing staff to disperse the money. So we'd have to come up with a methodology, a dollar amount, and then the authorization to proceed.
So, for me, being the simple-minded person that I am, it'd be really helpful to how much money is left, what projects are left. That's it. And then we can decide what we want to do.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
I think that if there were a consensus on the board, and maybe we don't need to decide if there is or there isn't tonight, but if there were a consensus on the board to earmark a substantial amount of money towards premium pay, I think it would be worth going through the exercise of figuring out how many people might be on that list, because you have people that served during COVID and have left. So I don't know that former employees would be eligible. We would want to decide that. There are people on the force now who weren't here during COVID, or at least during the height of COVID. We'd have to figure out what are the COVID dates. I guess we would determine those based on sort of official government, proclamations.
I believe the new employees actually received ARPA funds from their previous employers.
Okay. So I think we'd want to figure that out. And I mean, this perhaps would become a logistical impossibility, but in my mind, I'd love to have a list of first responders, public health employees for the town of Wenham. I think of people like Mary Beth Ting and the people that were, and teachers, which I realized I say teachers, and we're expanding the pool tremendously, and we're talking about teachers that work not for the town of Wenham per se, but for the Hamilton Wenham School District. But my simple-minded idea would be, let's get a list of all the those three groups of people who were working for the citizens of Wenham, the students of Wenham during COVID, and figuring out what is there a way to premium.
I would agree with that. I think, too, on the premium pay, you also have to decide whether it's a block type payment or proportional. Is it, in the military, it'd be hazard pay is, $1,000, or is it proportional to your rank and, your income, too? The school thing, I think, have to check the ARPA rules, but I think schools are out of that list.
They're not really. They're not eligible.
No.
Well, they're also not under our purview.
Yeah.
It's under the purview of the school committee.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think
Right.
it would
Yeah.
be-
No, I know that would be a big interesting area. But
That's a separate entity, and let them figure it out.
yeah. Although theoretically, if in my mind, if we did it and we said, here's an amount of money and
Yeah, but we,
want to direct it.
No,
I don't have a definite answer, but we, as far as I know, and I can double check, but we, I believe, selected the lost revenue exemption. So what, not to get too far in the weeds, but what the original ruling on ARPA funds when it came up from the federal government was that you had to do this lost revenue calculation that went back 3 years. You had to have it independently done and audited by, independent audit firm like
PwC or something like that.
yeah, and submit it for review. And a lot of and what they were doing is just they were looking at pure cash flow. So you had situations where, like my prior community, we had a bond proceeds come in. So if you looked at the rolling average, if you looked at our revenue, we lost, it was like $2 million or $2.7 million over the 3 years. But with the bond proceeds coming in year one, it showed our revenue as increasing by like $5 million. So they said, you're out, you don't get the lost revenue, you don't get any lost revenue, because that was, to put that town revenue, the $300,000 that's up there, you had to quantify that with audited financial statements. You couldn't just say, hey, we lost $500,000. They were like, all right, you can use $500,000 on anything you want. So that got a lot of pushback. And then they issued another an amendment that if any community, regardless of your amount, could take a $9 million lost revenue exemption. And we chose to do that. So that opens up, that makes it, you have a lot more flexibility to do with it what you want. One thing you cannot do with it, interestingly enough, is you can't take the money and put it into a stabilization or any type of reserve fund. It has to be spent.
It has to be spent this year. You can't allocate $300,000 for the next 3 years. It has to be all
No.
in.
No.
It's got to be,
Committed.
it's going to be a vote has to be taken that it's the executive body, in this case, usually it's town meeting, has the authority for the expenditure authority. In this case, in the federal government said that the executive body has the authority to spend this money. So the select board has all the power here in this situation. So that's why we just need a vote from you folks before the 31st. And I'll look into how flexible we can get.
So the question for tonight is just to start us thinking about this, or is there something
Yeah, well, I
specific?
wanted to give the update, and I wanted to get your feedback, basically what I'm getting right now.
Okay.
So we're working on a more succinct reconciliation.
How much
because-
money's left? What projects are left?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, discussion on what articles should be included on the warrant for special town meeting, and I think we're going to table that, because on our next meeting in 2 weeks, we're going to discuss whether we even want to have a special town meeting for 3A.
Yeah, just a reminder, I'm not here next week, or next meeting.
In 2 weeks, you're not going to be here.
Correct.
Going to work good?
Portsmouth,
Portsmouth?
Portsmouth's good.
apparently.
Yeah.
So timeline, backing up from November 16th, we have to have the warrant published 30 days in advance?
I think it's 2 weeks, but I'll
2
get
weeks.
back to you on that.
All right. Or maybe the 30 days, because we got to publish, we got to
Yeah, we
get
gotta
the printed.
start, like, by the end of the month, because that was the idea of this was so that maybe we could come with some proposed warrant next time, because we are running low on time. Yeah, just some discussion, because I've gotten feedback from, a few different members of the board, different ideas on how many articles to have on the warrant, whether it be just 3A and MBTA only, or to have some other articles that would hopefully, get more participation and ensure we meet a quorum. So, I'd be looking for some discussion from the board on that. I mean, I think we kind of need to move forward with at least drafting the warrant in case we decide to have a special town meeting, and then if at the last minute we decide not to do it, I'd rather be prepared to have it and then to not, than to need it and not be ready.
If you only have one article, and it's 3A, you're gonna get the quorum.
Yeah.
Well, that's right, that's what I'm looking for the board, because it's the select board's warrant, so you guys decide, do you want to have just 3A, or do you want to have other articles, because we have gotten requests for other articles.
And essentially, we just got the next 2 meetings to decide, right?
Yeah.
What would be the potential to push it off? Like, why wouldn't we consider that?
Why wouldn't you consider it?
Correct.
Well, you should consider it. I'm not, it's up to you what you want to do, I'm just providing the options.
Doesn't
I
law
would-
require compliance by the 30th?
Well, the law requires compliance,
my
but by the end of the year. However, we don't participate in any of the grant programs, and I don't foresee us participating in the grant programs. If you see that as the, like what's going to happen if we don't comply on December 31st, like we'll likely, probably nothing, especially if you're going to take it up by April. But again, it's up to the board.
Sorry?
It's gonna be messy that day. I mean, it's inevitably, are we ready for that?
Well, the way I see it is we're given, it's a law, and all the elected and appointed officials have an oath to uphold the law, and we are simply bringing forward a package to town meeting that says if you want to comply, our job is to comply with the law. If you want to comply with the law, here, simplest forms, here's an option that we believe is going to comply. If you don't, then, vote against it. Like residents, it's in your hands at this point. We've kind of done our job, and we brought it forward.
But I think it'd be helpful to know what the SJC decides.
So are we having this discussion now? Because we're veering into discussing whether or not to hold the special town meeting. So can we do that tonight, given what's already on the agenda, or are we veering too far?
Well, I'm open.
I just want to be clear.
Hear any discussion, but I think my intent was to be like, should I just go ahead and draft?
I think it's within the scope of the agenda item, if that's...
That's my question.
Because it could be...
F allows that,
And just to be clear, are we doing that right now, or are we doing that next time? Because, I'm prepared to speak on it or not, depending
Well,
on
I would like some
what we're doing.
guidance. My idea is I would like some guidance. So if you have an idea that's, that you would like to voice on how many warrant articles, or how we're going to structure the warrant, then I think, you should voice it and then get feedback, because maybe the board was like, yeah, we want to go with multiple articles, we want to go with one article.
I think
Just want to get you thinking. You don't have to make a decision today. But.
So I have a planning board meeting on Thursday. And I'd be more than happy to bring up that we're thinking of canceling the special town meeting for 3A, because we want to find out what the SJC actually decides. And then if we still have to do it, then we can cover that at regular town meeting.
Well, the sequence, when's the planning board taking the vote on the proposed bylaw?
Give that dates.
Pardon?
Kate has those dates. She's just pulling them up.
If we remove 3A, we will not have a quorum.
so it doesn't matter what other warrants you have on there. We won't have anybody go. So drafting and spending time doing that, if we then are going to remove 3A, you're not gonna get enough people.
Well, yeah, I don't think, yeah, I agree. Wenham doesn't traditionally do special town meetings, and it's not really, something you want to get in the habit of doing. So the whole purpose of this special town meeting was for the MBTA 3A, and if, the board decides to push it to the annual, then yeah, I don't think we should have it for anything else. Usually it's for pressing issues like this, where there's a compliance deadline, or we had to have some funding, some bonding done for the schools, and that's why we had to have a special town meeting 2 years ago, because it was time dependent.
Ben, what do you think?
Well, I think Deirdre may have been next in queue, so.
So initially, I had wanted to have something else on the warrant so that we could accomplish something else, and it was one of the green initiatives. I've sort of shifted my thinking, and even before this evening, having spent a lot of time reflecting on this issue and trying to read all of the information, I had shifted my thinking before tonight, and I think it was also reinforced tonight, that I believe that there is wisdom in postponing the special town meeting pending the outcome of the Milton case with the Supreme Judicial Court. And so that we see what direction they go in, because if the law is overturned, I would prefer that we not have voted for something. If the law is upheld, then I think we need to have the conversation at that point in time. Ben probably knows more about the likelihood of the when, as to whether it should be another special town meeting or we just hold it to the annual town meeting. And if it's somewhere in between, then we would need to do some kind of regrouping, depending on what they come out with. So that's where I ended up even prior to this evening's meeting. So Ben, you may know the timeline a little
Sure. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, the oral arguments in the Milton case are scheduled for October 7th. The Supreme Judicial Court tries to follow a 130-day time standard between oral argument and issuance of decision. That's about 4.5 months. They might expedite it, but I don't think we can count on it being expedited. There's no chance, or virtually no chance, that it would be decided before our November STM date. There's probably a very slim chance that it would be decided before December 31st, which, as Joe pointed out, is the present compliance deadline. So we're probably looking at mid to late February when they would issue its decision, so just from a timing standpoint. I've given this a lot of thought as well, and thinking about those timelines, thinking about the compliance deadline, also thinking about the amount of work that has gone into where we are right now from staff and the planning board. And I do think there's wisdom in holding off, because I think that the members of town meeting should have as much information, as much accurate information about both sides as possible when they make their decision. And one piece of information that's missing presently, and that will be missing if we hold this in November, is the overall legality and constitutionality of the statute, which the SJC has in front of it. And so I think for some of the reasons that Deirdre mentioned and others have mentioned, it makes sense to wait, because if it were to pass, which seems maybe like kind of an unlikely prospect based on a lot of the public feedback we're receiving, if it were to pass, and then portions of it were struck down, we will have put zoning in place that wouldn't be invalid. It would just be, okay, Wenham decided to do this, even though maybe 3A was determined not to be valid, and then we would need a 2/3 vote to undo things. So that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, especially when I think the planning board may have other ideas for zoning that it wants to do outside of the 3A sort of hammer. Maybe more thoughtful zoning about density behind the shopping center that isn't quite, as dense as 3A requires. And then if we hold it and it fails, and then the law is upheld by the SJC, which seems like those two things both to me seem pretty likely that it would fail in November, and that the SJC ultimately is going to uphold it. Doesn't seem to me like it puts us in a great position coming back a second time. There are also issues about whether or not the planning board recommends and whether we could even bring it back. So in my mind, I think that there is wisdom in postponing it. I think coupled with a letter to the Department of Housing and Livable Communities that just explains like what we're doing and why, which I think would minimize to almost zero the prospect of there being any kind of compliance blowback. It's a sensible thing to do, to wait for the SJC. And I think we could be transparent and lay it out, make clear that we're not, as a board anyway, we're not, you know, raising the torches against 3A and kind of throwing in with Milton, despite what some of our citizens want us to do. So I think that that would be a prudent course. And if we had a consensus on the board to do that, what we could do at the next meeting would be to, and I'd be happy to draft something, would be to like sort of draft maybe what the letter would be or what our plan and our alternative and might be.
So Karen and Gary, I'm with him and Deirdre. And that would be great if at the next meeting you have that letter.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of postponing it. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yep.
And I am truly worried that it's circulating. You have a lot of people even here unaware of questions and reference materials that they can go to, and they're going off by what their neighbor has said to them. You can tell by the street that showed up tonight. I'm fully supportive that we push this off, with the caveat is we need to figure out a way to educate the community in a better process, whether it's having more open forums with the planning board or having more open forums here.
I literally don't understand how you can have more
I don't disagree
open
with that
forums.
sentence either. I don't know.
I mean,
It's
you
a
were
lot. It's a lot.
head of the master plan task force. And
We need to find a way to get the correct information out there. So whatever way we figure that out, but I do believe before the annual meeting in April, we need to figure that out.
Gary?
The timeline then, again, do we have a vote date for the planning board?
Yes. On September 12th, the planning board will need to vote to submit the draft article to the select board. They do not have to recommend the article at that meeting. The select board will then vote at their September 17th meeting to recommend the article back to the planning board for the public hearing. The planning board's public hearing will be on September 26th, and then that is when the planning board would have to vote to submit the
The
article.
17th is no longer the 17th, it should be the 24th. We moved the select board date.
Okay.
So that would leave the planning board 36 hours to get there.
Well, no, you send it to the planning board to have their public hearing. Nothing will change. Just
That's
like
not a
review.
decision, that's
Oh.
just a refer back, right?
Yeah, you
To the
refer,
planning board
you
to allow the public hearing.
But if we were to vote to postpone the special town meeting, would that make the planning board's actions that currently are due by September 12th unnecessary?
I mean,
wouldn't have
they could still hold the public hearing. It doesn't, you can hold the public hearing now for the meeting in April.
that doesn't make sense.
But it doesn't make, I'm not saying it makes sense, but it's, you don't have to hold
If
it.
the 12th is their public hearing on a rezoning, on this rezoning?
Yeah, on the 27th.
No,
27th, yeah.
Oh, the 12th is when they need to draft something and send it to us, so we
Yeah.
can, I'm
So we
sorry,
can
okay.
approve it by.
Yes, it's like we're reviewed on the 24th.
I
Well,
got
you don't really, you just look at it, well, I mean, you can review it, but you say, okay,
Okay.
on receipt of it, planning board move forward with your public hearing process, and then they're gonna come after the public hearing process. In theory, they hear the input from the community, make any changes based on the feedback they receive, and then make a recommendation to the select board, like basically finalize the proposal and send it back to the select board as a final proposal with a recommendation of votes, saying this is what we want you to include in the warrant.
So can we vote tonight to postpone? Or to potentially postpone?
There's no vote on the agenda.
There's no vote.
No vote.
Oh, right, yep.
Even though it says potential vote for backup selection?
As backup.
Can't we?
That's a backup date, not a cancellation of the
So
first
we have
one.
to,
More with an
we'll
E.
vote on it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of,
The
the
public
planning
hearing
board
notice
moved-
has already gone out.
yeah. So, I mean, we could hold a special meeting this week if you guys want to do like one of our quick Zoom meetings, if there's availability, with a, just agenda would be just to vote. Up on vote if that's what you want to do. And that way it'll give us time to notify the public, the planning board can kind of stand down, you know, instead of trying to do all this in the day leading up to the public hearing.
So today's only Tuesday.
If you look at E and F together on the agenda, even though E doesn't say potential vote, I mean, F talks about both, potential vote both for the backup date and the location for special town meeting.
I would suggest that we get everything in order first before we take a final vote. So I'd like to, if Ben's going to draft up the letter of explanation,
Yep.
I think that should be in place and be viewable by the public before we
That makes
make a
sense.
final decision on canceling the town meeting or not.
Yeah, I agree with that, that makes sense.
So I would put it, I would want it to wait the 2 weeks until we vote on the actual cancellation of the meeting.
In 2 weeks, and we'll have the letter.
Right, we should have the letter, review it, accept that as something that we're going to forward, and, and I should think too that we ought to, the select board ought to ask the planning board if, if they're in concurrence with that too, as far as, dealing with state authorities, because, they're the ones that are actually on task right now to comply with the law, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it should, if we're going to not proceed, it ought to be concurrent between the planning board and the select board to go in that route, with a understanding that the select board, being the executive authority, would transmit a letter of some sort to the department at the state level explaining our position.
Okay. So I think we're all in agreement, right?
For the 24th, can I request that that be the first line item? And I'll do everything I can to see if I can call in
See what we can
From Portsmouth?
from Portsmouth.
They have cell
Middle of
service.
So,
No, like gala events, I will go to the bathroom, yes.
There are a couple really nice hotels in Portsmouth.
Yeah, we're at the courthouse.
Right.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
All right, can we move on? Discussion and potential vote on 2 iron rail leasing agreements, LaPlante Healing Arts and Provost Personal Training.
So this is a project Joe has spearheaded really over the last year. It's been a ton of work. So we took all the all the leases for the iron rail expired in June. So we've been working with council and all the tenants and their council to redraft the agreements. And now with the unknown of the iron rail, and what the future holds for that property, and the need to create new leases. If you were to change, you can extend the lease, but if you were to change the terms, you have to go to town meeting to get town meeting approval to enter into a lease. However, the select board has the authority to enter into a licensing agreement. And in licensing agreements, the town's right to cancel the agreement at any time for any reason is inherent in the agreement. It is also, specified in the document. So we've negotiated the terms, minimal changes, they're 3-year terms, and we're starting, all of them are pretty much done. We're still wrapping up more just like final review some typographical issues on the other ones, but we're plant healing and provost personal training. The first two before you. What happened?
Sorry, we lost it.
My digital pen went rolling.
All right, so-
I can.
We were listening to you.
Yeah,
Hey,
right.
we still have people, we still have
It's almost
people.
9 o'clock.
Sorry.
All
I'm
right,
not even listening to myself.
so I move to approve the LaPlante Healing Arts and Provost Personal Training LLC licensing agreements. Discussion?
Thank you, Joe, for all your work.
Oh,
on
of
it.
course. No problem.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe.
You're welcome.
All right, then we'll vote. Peter says yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Gary, yes.
All right, thank you, Joe.
No problem.
The Select Board will review the staff's recommendation for the award of the Comprehensive Energy Management Services contract for Wenham Town Hall, contract number 25002.
Yep, so that's the memo that we passed around earlier. Mass procurement law for these types of services requires that we go out to get a request for qualifications. We had 2 interested parties submit proposals to the town, where I had to appoint a review committee and part of procurement law to review and score these 2 proposals in a uniform fashion. So they both were scored on the same merits in the same way by the same folks. And the committee came back to the board recommending that it selects energy,
ESG.
ESG.
Energy Systems Group.
Energy Systems Group, you can tell it's getting late. So in a nutshell, what this is it actually, it's a silver lining. When we elect the board, I asked the board to allow us to forego the designing element of the geothermal because we thought it was going to be just way too expensive to be feasible given our capital that we had set aside. We have about $500,000 set aside minus $50,000 for the design. Plus what we're hoping to get is $500,000 from a state grant as part of the green communities. So that's $950,000. Geothermal would far exceed that. So we figured that really our only play to electrify, which would go with these mini split ground units. And we also had to make a proposal so the state could see that, you know, we've also priced out an in-kind replacement. So the study was going to be for those 2. That individual group withdrew their interest right after the meeting, so it kind of left us scrambling. We were able to, Vicky Masson really had this idea that under the Green Communities Act, it allows you to have these energy studies done and fund these projects with future savings. So it's essentially these contractors the contractors that propose this are taking the risk on what your energy savings are going to be in the future. So they will come in and they will design 3 of these. You know, it'll design a geothermal option. It'll design ground mounted heat pumps, and it will design a in-kind replacement. It will also identify potential savings going into the future. And they are also the builder, the contractor, that will project manage the project for the HVAC. In that, they, of course, have profits built in to it. But what they're essentially doing is saying that you can pay, you know, hypothetical situation, currently right now you spend $100,000 on energy. We'll guarantee you give us that $100,000 that you're already spending on energy for the next 10 years. We'll install your system, build it, and you have essentially no money out of pocket. And then at the end of the 10 years, you get, you take control of your system and you realize the savings. So it's really a good deal. It's only green communities have access to this program. There's a state law that allows it because it's essentially it's a borrowing, because you are borrowing funds and paying for it into the future. But it allows you to act as the board and entering this agreement and circumventing town meeting, which would generally be required for a borrowing situation like this. So we believe it to be a very good deal for the town. At the end of the day, if they complete this study, they're going to help us apply for the grant on October 14th, I believe. If we don't get the grant, things fall apart, we change our mind, there's no obligation. We pay for the study that we had done, just like we would have in any other scenario, and we walk away. We put another fossil fuel replacement in. We do whatever we want to do. You're not required to do anything. It's just this is kind of getting in the process and moving forward, selecting the vendor that you're going to move forward in this process with.
Any questions?
No, I'm convinced.
All right, so I move to select Energy Systems Group to provide comprehensive energy management services contract for Wenham Town Hall HVAC project, contract number 25-02.
Second.
All right, ready to vote? Peter says yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Jerry, yes.
All right, I flipped the page and we're going to skip K. Anybody ever issues with that?
Nope.
So I move to adjourn this
My new
select.
spreadsheet.
What?
I said my new spreadsheet.
Sorry, guy. It's fucking 9
I'm
o'clock.
kidding, I'm kidding.
You
I'm more than happy to
can go
call.
show it to all the 3A people.
More than happy to know it.
I move to adjourn this select board meeting at 9 p.m. And our next meeting is on September 24th at 6:30 p.m.
And that next meeting will include potential vote on the town meeting, and also we'll have some dollar figures on,
ARPA.
for ARPA. All right, all right.
Yeah, if we can just put those at the top too, I'll do it again.
Did anybody second?
Second?
Discussion. I vote yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Jerry, yes.